All right, we're live. Evening, everybody. This is Daniel from the Canadian Bitcoin Conference podcast. We're here with our friends Ben, Wasim, and Sunny. And tonight we have Rajat Soni. How are you, Rajat?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good, good. Do you want to do a quick introduction to yourself?
Um, sure. I create Bitcoin content. I don't know what to say. I create Bitcoin content. I have my CFA charter. I've been in the finance industry for a little while. I used to be in the finance industry for a little while. I worked in asset management. Um, I started learning about Bitcoin in 2021, and I've never stopped thinking about it since.
Wow.
Was that out of necessity you started thinking about it? Or how did that come about?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Wasim?
Was that out of necessity you started thinking about it? You started thinking about it in 2021?
I think it was out of necessity. I was a little bored. I came across somebody who posted about the Bitcoin standard, and at the time, I was doing okay financially. Like I had paid off my debt, um, but there's always I feel like there's always a way. There's always a need to improve your finances. You're always gonna feel at least a little bit like you can do better. And I came across somebody who posted about the Bitcoin standard, the book, and I read it, and it changed everything. Changed how I think about the world.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that it's had that effect on.
Yeah.
I just looking at your X profile or your Twitter profile here, Rajat. It says I help 30 to 55 year olds retire with Bitcoin. So why just 30 to 55 year olds? Why not everybody?
I help everybody, but I think my main target is people who have a solid income stream, people who are done investing in their own skills and they want to save in something that can increase in value. I mean, if you're much younger than that, you probably don't have a solid income stream, and you can obviously work on that, and you can increase your skills. And that's not what I help people with. I help people with actually saving and building wealth using Bitcoin. So I think there's a point when you're, let's say, at 30, 31, 32, you really start thinking more about your finances. And before that, I don't think most people take it seriously. I didn't take it seriously before that. So it's based on my journey, the way that I have thought. And I think by 55, you still have a lot of time. A lot of people at 55 still have no plan for retirement. Like they haven't even thought of it. You'd be surprised. Most people haven't even thought of how they're going to be able to pay for their expenses. Like they just outsource everything to the government or to their employers, and they don't end up doing very well financially. It actually hurts them a lot because they haven't been putting the time, effort, and energy towards retirement, and their money can't compound. So 30 to 55 is that sweet spot.
Perfect.
I,
Well,
I
yeah.
see, Rajat, your link to just stream this on your socials is got disconnected. Maybe if you click on that top right button there,
Yeah, I'm
enable it.
about to link it right now. Give me one
Perfect.
second
Okay.
here. Just
So
doing
I'm
it
just
now.
curious while you're doing that, right? Because maybe you sitting in the chartered role, right? Kind of in your CFA role, you get to talk to people about money, investing, just in general. Like, do you find like people are generally good with money, or they don't have any idea? They need guidance. Like, what's the kind of just paint
Oh,
broad strokes?
good question. I think most people are horrible with money. Like they don't have any experience whatsoever. Um, they've never even thought about investing. So to them, it's a huge surprise when you bring it up, right? Because most people have like it's like with health, the majority of people have no idea what a calorie is, right? And out of the people who do know what it is, they don't know how to apply that knowledge to their own life. And I think people need a push towards the right direction. So, for example, I have a guy who's in my group. He watched one of my webinars. I think it was like 2.5 years ago. It was like end of 2023, early 2024. I made a webinar just explaining Bitcoin for beginners, just the basics, the fundamentals. And he watched it and he didn't take action. So think about how much he would have benefited from taking action back then. Back then, Bitcoin was at like 38, 40K. So he'd
Yeah.
already be up 50%, and he just has cash sitting on the side. When I spoke with him at first, he told me he just has cash sitting in his bank account, and he's done nothing with it. And he's known about Bitcoin because he watched the webinar, but he didn't take action, right? And I think that's the hardest part, taking action. That's the most difficult part, because it takes some kind of effort from you, and I think most people just aren't willing to put in the effort. Like they don't want to open the account. It seems just too difficult. It's like that hump that you have to get over, and if you don't go over it with enough momentum, you're not gonna get over it, right? Like if you're driving over a speed bump, if you have to have a certain level of speed, otherwise you're just not gonna get over, right? And I think that's what I help people. That's my goal, to help people. It's like to get them started with just running, so that when they start downloading the apps, they don't feel like, oh, this is too overwhelming, I'm gonna give up, and then they put it off for another 6 months.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, it makes me think when you said the calorie, like when you count calories, you're more kind of specifics with what's going in. So I just wonder, when it comes to finances, kind of a budget, net worth, kind of knowing that those initial stat lines, I would presume is one of the early steps to take, because whether you look at the information and digest it or not, it is what it is. And so like becoming aware of that information. So I guess it kind of similar to Wasim, but what would you say is like the correlation between like individuals that do track the basics, budgeting, their transactions, their net worth, to like to their net worth? Like, do you see an obvious correlation there?
Huge correlation. If you're not tracking it, you're not going to have, in most, probably like 95% of people's situations, if they're not tracking it, they're not going to have a positive net worth. Like
95%. Wow. Okay.
At least from what I've seen, like most people who aren't tracking their numbers, it's just really easy for them to spend, right? Because I had a client who, he was making 300K. He was a doctor, and his wife wasn't working. She was at home. She was taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, and they were spending $3,000 a month on food delivery. And he didn't know. He had no idea. He hadn't looked at his numbers. Because think about it. If you like, you may be okay with looking at it for 1 month, but even then, like putting the numbers together, putting it on an Excel spreadsheet, getting some AI to take a look at it, most people don't even get to that point, right? So they don't notice that they're spending so much. And when you track it, that's when you see it. Even for myself, that's exactly what I was doing wrong. I wasn't tracking my expenses, and at one point I think it was in 2018 or 2019, I finally started tracking my expenses and seeing, okay, what am I doing wrong here? What mistakes am I making? And I figured out that I'm spending like $500 to $600 a month on takeout. And that's a lot of money. Back then, that was a lot of money. Now it's not that much, right? Because one meal is $20. But back then it was like $8, $9 a meal. So I was eating out on average like 2-3 times a day, which is crazy because I was spending all this money on something that I didn't even really enjoy. I could have learned to cook at home. But I didn't notice it until I started tracking it.
And this is all stuff that you kind of came across before Bitcoin, right? Like this is all just basics. Understand like what's going on with my money? Where's it going? Leaky bucket.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I used to post on social media. I've been posting on social media for about since May of 2025, and I started off posting about personal finance, just the basics, index funds, budgeting, building your own net worth, all that stuff, real estate, stocks.
Yeah, it's I think that's, like you said, that's an issue for a lot of people. And people tend to think, if I have enough money to get by this month, and pay all those expenses and all those leaks that are going out, then I'll just wait until I get paid at the end of the month and do it all over again. Do you think being involved in Bitcoin and going down that rabbit hole in 2021, do you think that helped with that, or you've always been conscientious person with regards to money?
Oh, it definitely helped. Like in the legacy system, most people just assume they're going to retire in like 40 years, right? So every every decision you make, you have to think, am I going to benefit from this in 40 years, or should I benefit from it now? I feel like thinking 40 years down the line, it just holds a lot of people back from even thinking about saving and investing, right? And most people can't think, oh, I'm 22 now, I'm going to be 62 and I can finally use this money and it'll be worth 10 times more. But even then, like if it's worth 10 times more, what is it actually worth? Because of inflation, they tell us inflation is 2%, but what is inflation actually? Is it 5%, 6%? Right? So once you start figuring it out and you start seeing that your life is really getting way more expensive over time, I think Bitcoin makes that a lot easier. It makes it easier to digest. Because I mean, if you just think about it from the personal finance perspective, you'd have to, if you invested in the legacy financial system, you'd have to constantly think about, what should my allocation be? What should I be buying? I need to invest my short-term goals. I need to invest for my medium-term goals. I need to invest for my long-term goals, for my ultra long-term goals, like 40 years from now, 30 years from now. Before, it was like you had to have different assets for each goal. Now you can, I have a video that did really, really well on YouTube. It's called All You Need is Bitcoin and Cash. That's literally all you need. You don't need anything else. If you're retired, you could have 4 years of cash and then the rest of it could be in Bitcoin. And
what's the cash for?
For your expenses, right? I mean, if you're retired, let's say, for example, if you're not working, your goal should be to make sure that you don't have to sell Bitcoin during a drawdown. Right. And if you're retired, obviously you don't have any income coming in, but you need to account for that, right? You need to make sure that you're as deleveraged as possible. You don't want to be selling your Bitcoin at the bottom. I think that's the thing that's going to hurt a lot of people, because when I first talked about this, when I first talked about Bitcoin and cash, I was getting a lot of shit for it, because people were saying, oh, why do you need cash? You don't need cash. You're so stupid for holding cash. Inflation is this, inflation is that. And after the bear market, people started agreeing with me. They started making their own posts about it. So cash has its place. I mean, there's a limit to how much cash you need. If you're still working, maybe you want 3 to 6 months worth of cash. But as you get closer and closer to retirement, you'd probably want to add to that and maybe get from 3 to 6 months to a year to 2 years. The closer you get to retirement, the more cash you want, because if you can quit your job at any point, you want that cash to be there for you to rely on to pay for your expenses.
And arguably, Rajat, right? Like, I mean, products are starting to emerge where, yeah, I can understand the cash component, right, for all the reasons that you just cited. But like even, you know, products that are starting to emerge that are yield generating, right? Like some of these corporate treasury products that are starting to emerge with preferred equities, etc. I mean, is that something to consider as not an alternative to cash, but as a complement to?
I think if you have maybe, I used to think that if you have a 6 month time horizon or more, then you can hold those products. But now I think that it has to be longer. So I used to think, okay, if you have, let's say, for example, you have a goal that you need to accomplish in the next month, you don't want to hold like Stretch, for example, or SEDA.
Right.
SEDA. You wouldn't want to hold those assets in that situation. But let's say, for example, you have 2 years to your goal, or you have 6 months, or but actually, let's go back. So before, I used to think if you have a 6 month time horizon, then you should be okay with holding Stretch. But now I think it may be longer. So maybe a year at least, maybe 2 years, right? So let's say, for example, your short-term expenses, your first year of retirement would be covered entirely in cash. And then after that, maybe 2 years and beyond, you can hold on to Stretch. And then 4 years and beyond, you can hold on to Bitcoin.
It's an interesting makeup.
Hey, Rajat, I have a couple questions. Sorry.
Of course. I was gonna say it depends on your goals, right? And when you have your goals like, just set out aligned in the way that you want your portfolio to be, it just becomes so much easier.
Go ahead,
hey,
Sonny.
Rajat. Yeah, Rajat, I was gonna ask you a question, man. So I guess in light of what's happened in Bitcoin in the hardware security space over the last month or two, has your perspective or I don't know how you maybe recommend people set up their hardware wallet, has any of that changed? Has it shaken you a little bit? Has it made you more kind of resolute towards the Bitcoin mission? Just curious how all this is shaking out for you, because I've had obviously a lot of people like call me with devastating stories where they have lost their life saving. They're now, driving Ubers, or they're just in a really tough place. So just curious and I know like 100 times more people than me, having walked through the conference floor with you. This guy couldn't get through more than 10 steps without being mauled. But yeah, curious how you're seeing it all kind of shake out in the field.
So I think most people, I mean, in total, there was probably what, like 1,000 people who got hit, right? And that's was it
Oh,
more
that's
than that?
it.
I don't know.
Hmm.
Was it more than
I
that? I don't know.
think, yeah, I think it was was it 1,300
1,300.
wallets, maybe. Yeah.
So 1,300 wallets, like it's a lot, and it's how much Bitcoin was that? Like 2,000 almost, 1,700 Bitcoin or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's huge, right? And that's horrible. And I think people's trust is gone away a little bit. I think eventually it'll come back, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm not to be insensitive to the people who lost Bitcoin. In the grand scheme of things, this doesn't change Bitcoin at all, right? If anything, it strengthens Bitcoin. It's unfortunate that the people who lost Bitcoin lost their Bitcoin, but in general, I think this has made people more aware of security. And I've actually spoken to a lot of people who had cold cards and they didn't have their Bitcoin swept, but they reset their seed phrase using dice rolls. Like they did 100 dice rolls. They now have a 24 word seed phrase. Now they have a way more secure passphrase. And I think it's made them even more resilient to future attacks, right? And in the short term, it may have hurt Bitcoin, but I think the long term thesis for this hasn't changed. I think the long term, it's probably gotten more powerful because the people who hold Bitcoin have now made their setups even more secure.
Right. Hey, one more question, I guess, before handing back to the guys. What's the strongest argument against Bitcoin that you still haven't, been able to answer to your own kind of satisfaction?
Good question. I think quantum is
Okay.
probably the biggest problem, but even that, I think it'll probably be resolved at some point, right? I don't think it'll be, I don't think it's something that'll be a problem in 10 years, right? I think by 10 years from now, it will probably have been resolved. I'm not sure how. I don't have any kind of tech background or anything like that. I don't code. But I think that the people who have enough wealth in Bitcoin are going to fund the development for that. That's how I think of it. But again, I don't have enough of a tech background, so I'm always questioning it. And even when I try to explain it to people that quantum computers aren't powerful enough, and they probably won't be for another 5, 6, 7 years, maybe 10 years, I still question it deep down.
Yeah, just like AI, it kind of came out of left field. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Wasim.
exactly.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's very legitimate, right? Like you got quantum, you got all these AI, all these new threat vectors, right? That we gotta
Yeah.
stay vigilant, and it's about adaptability, right? So so
Yeah.
the coin kite, obviously fiasco there, right? I mean that hurt people, as you said, right? So we don't want to be insensitive to that. But at the end of the day, right, this is what's going to strengthen the overall ecosystem. So those are kind of the lessons that we're going to have to learn, right? So. But I guess what I'm hearing is like self-custody is alive and well. That's still something that we're absolutely going to have to get better at, right? And adapt as these threat vectors increase. So you're still pushing it but we just have to kind of fine tune how we do it.
On the just back, Rajat, on the self-custody item. So I mean, part of this whole process, the cold card hack, we when you talk to people and you listen to people online, there's kind of seems to be two camps. I mean, there were camps that were saying, okay, self-custody is not for me. I'm going back to an exchange or I'm doing something else. And then there was people who had the technical knowledge and technical ability to, like you say, start looking at dice rolls and the passphrases and everything. Like, have you noticed a change in that now, or how do you recommend to people what they should do, or do you have a preference?
I've actually never recommended people to use a certain wallet. I've mentioned certain wallets, but I've also mentioned, like, let's say for example, if I've mentioned Cold Card, I usually try to mention different brands as well, like Trezor, Ledger. Maybe there have been times where I only mentioned the Cold Card, but it's just like it's the wallet that I was using, right? So it's not like I wasn't getting paid by them. I didn't have any brand deal with them or anything like that. But I think that more people are becoming aware, though. More people are seeing that, okay, if somebody is just talking about a certain wallet, maybe I should do my research and not just listen to them. And I think that's changed a bit. And I've noticed that in my comments, a lot of people are asking me um, my thoughts on different types of wallets. I try not to answer because I don't have a technical background. I don't even know where to begin when it comes to. I still like the cold card. I actually still do. I'm still using it, but I don't even know where to begin to start checking the code.
Kid
Right. So I
uses
try
it.
not
My
to.
2-year-old uses it as a phone now, which
Oh, yeah.
makes like
Yeah, I mean, we had this discussion in the last podcast, and you know, like you said, I don't really have a technical background in term when it comes to Bitcoin either. And you know, you get the cold card packaging, and it says "Don't trust, verify." Well, I was hoping that some other technical guy would verify it for me. Like I wasn't going to verify it for myself. So yeah, that's it's that old thing where you know, like I wanted all the benefits of self custody and all the protections, but you know, wasn't able to or didn't have the technical knowledge just to be able to enforce it.
There's got to be some irony in all this, though. No, like it to me, it
Absolutely,
felt like
100%.
the
Like,
Bitcoiners in self custody on cold card were like the people who had it all figured out. But it just seems like the people who have it all figured out maybe don't.
Maybe no.
It's like Bitcoin gets even the deepest ones in it to reflect and realize.
Hey,
yeah,
Rajat,
yes, sir.
you say you're non-technical, right? But you publish a spreadsheet that you share with everybody, right? And it's very technical. Like, well, I should say it can be, right? At least what you've implemented in it. But it's do you want to speak about that? Like what that offers?
Yeah.
'Cause,
Oh, yeah. Of course. I think that's important. I talk about that in every single video. I can actually share it. I can share the my screen here, and then I can show you guys what it is.
because I think it also
Sure.
links to like your most, you know, your most popular video, right? Like owning 1 Bitcoin and how it can change your life. 0.1 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Just while you're while you're bringing that up, Rajat. So Mickey Junior Smile, I think, says self custody is too risky. Just buy IBIT and FBTC
Fidelity
yeah,
ETF.
for custodial diversity, and then DCA. It's easy to buy and sell, and inheritance is easier. Yeah, I've kind of had those thoughts as well. But once you start to rely on Bitcoin, you know, self custody Bitcoin for future payments, you know, are the off ramps always going to be there in 10 years? Hopefully.
What do you
And the
think,
crazy
Rajat?
thing is, if you have a Bitcoin, you don't actually need you don't need banks, you don't need IBIT, you don't need BlackRock, Fidelity. You can actually transfer Bitcoin to other people peer to peer.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as long as you have access to that network. I mean, if you're, you know, if there is that network built around you. I saw John Attack from El Salvador, is that his name? You know that guy? Anyway, he was talking about Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador, and pretty much, you know, he was talking about how Bitcoin payments have dried up in El Salvador in terms of payment. And yeah, like if you're not using it, you're probably losing it. And then, you know, there's different cases. Like I know Francis and from Bull Bitcoin and those guys are doing something differently in Costa Rica. I haven't watched that uh, documentary yet, but my understanding is they're using it in like, you know, live markets for fruit, vegetables, and everything. So I think it just depends. You need to have the network around you to do that. So sorry,
Yeah.
bring up your spreadsheet.
It's true, but I feel like you can always find somebody who's willing to accept a Bitcoin for cash.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can
I'm
you
sharing
pull
my
up this?
screen.
Yeah, Dan, you might have to
Oh,
pull up
sorry.
the
Yeah,
screen.
sorry, I got.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay. Okay, so this spreadsheet, basically there's like a bunch of different spreadsheets at the bottom here that show you different information. Actually, I think the one that I think that the one that a lot of people benefit from the most is this one right here. And I'll explain what it is. So let's say, for example, if you were to buy $150 worth of Bitcoin every single week since 2021's all-time high at 69K, in that time, Bitcoin's only up 14%. But if you had dollar cost averaged, if you had continued to buy weekly, you would have been up 84%, which I mean, it's pretty good when you consider that Bitcoin's down, or Bitcoin's only up 13 or 14%. You'd be up 84%. And I'll show you the math behind this. So the math here is that essentially you'd be buying no matter what. And you'd be buying at the tops and you'd be buying at the bottom. So the chart for Bitcoin, I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with it, but I'll show you the extent of what I mean, what I'm trying to show you here. So give me 1 second here. Okay, this is the chart. So what you see here is Bitcoin's price. If you had started buying at the top here, I mean, what do you guys think? Would you guys consider that's the worst time to buy right here?
Yeah, usually buying the tops is not favorable, right?
Right. So if you had started buying then, and you just kept buying and you kept buying, you saw Bitcoin go all the way down to like 15, 16K, and then went all the way up to 126K. Then it came back down. Now it's back up a little bit. But if you had kept doing that long term, that would mean that you would have bought in 2021, 2022. So for example, you'd have bought some Bitcoin down here. When Bitcoin was 16.5, you would have bought 909,000 Satoshis with $150. Now that's worth $715. And if we keep going, you can see the numbers accumulate. There are buys where you'd be down a lot. Actually, this one right here, October 5th. If you had bought Bitcoin on October 5th, you would have only gotten 119,000 Satoshis for the same purchase.
Yeah, that's
And
another
that
top, right? In October.
That was the top, exactly. And now you'd be down to $93.71 on that purchase. So if you accumulate all this, if you just, if you aggregate all the purchases, you would have bought 87.7 million Satoshis worth $69,000 right now. And you would have paid $37,500 for it. In the same time, the S&P 500 is up 63%. But if you had bought it the same way, if you had continued to buy $150 worth every week, you'd only be up 50.67%. So this is one of the things, one of the sheets that I have in the entire workbook. Tons of other sheets. Any thoughts on this so far? Any questions?
No, this is great, right? And then you're also at the end of the day, like if you're right now, you're just buying the S&P. That's the actual index, right? That's the SPY ETF, I guess, right? Based on that, what you showed there. Yeah.
Yeah. So buying the SPY index, even though it's up 63% versus Bitcoin's only up 14%, your DCA would be up 84%, whereas the S&P 500 would be up 50%. Massive difference.
Right. And just to come back and address that question about IBIT versus like buying Fidelity instead of just buying like spot Bitcoin, which is what you're showing here, instead of SPY. I mean, you could do that too. You could probably get the price exposure on IBIT or FBTC, but you don't own the Bitcoin. Here you own the Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And arguably, if you don't want to own the Bitcoin, you don't want to do self-custody. Well, but then you've got, counterparty risk here with BlackRock or Fidelity, right? And you don't, and they don't trade on the weekends either. So if you want to get out of your position on the weekends or after market, it's not possible.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, how you're saying, the counterparty risk, how risky is IBIT or FBTC?
Well, they run what, $13 trillion, I think, right? BlackRock does at least. So probably not very risky, but there's no reason why they couldn't shut that down, right?
Yeah,
I
understand. What's the the chances would be slim, like very slim, and I think that's the probably a lot of Bitcoiners ask themselves, right? Do I take the chance that IBIT goes under or Fidelity goes under, or do I take the chance of I'm going to lose my keys, or I'm going to get swiped, or I'm going to get so it's. I mean, that discussion is relevant now, but it's becoming, with more options available, it's going to become a bigger topic, I think.
I think it's about trade-offs, right? I don't know if there's a black and white answer. It's trade-offs on what's important for you. So I don't know. What do you think, Rajat?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's about the trade-offs. So in the program that I run, I actually have a section where we talk about what the difference is between holding your Bitcoin in an ETF versus holding it in an exchange versus holding it in self-custody. If you hold it in self-custody, you have full control of the Bitcoin. You have the keys. You can move it whenever you want to. Whereas if you hold it with a financial institution, you have to get their permission to move it. And if, let's say, for example, there's a 6102 attack, I think that the government is I mean, your exchange is probably going to comply with the government over letting you decide what they do with their Bitcoin.
Explain maybe, Rajat, for anybody who doesn't know, and I only partially know what 6102 attack is and when it happened. I don't know if it's relevant for Canadians, but maybe Americans.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's relevant for anybody because if governments want to take your assets, they will. And the 6102 attack, well, it's an executive order 6102, and I called it an attack because they basically took everybody's gold in 1933. They got people to deposit their gold with the Federal Reserve, and the following year they repriced the gold at something like 70% higher. So it went from they paid people $20 per ounce of gold, and then they repriced it to $35 an ounce the following year. So the people who gave their gold away immediately lost like 40% of their purchasing power. And how do we know that's not going to happen here, right? If governments get too desperate, I mean, they'll take what they can get.
How do we know it's not happening now?
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
Rajat, I'm curious. You and I used to get into it a little bit back and forth about real estate. You have a chip on your shoulder for the real estate, the landlords and the realtors, etc. So we used to kind of go back and forth about real estate being a shit coin, and I guess ultimately I agreed because I have exited my real estate. But I'm curious your thoughts on somebody that already have assets. I guess primarily, I guess I'll stick to real estate because that's the one that most people would be familiar, or it has the most financial rails set up for taking leverage, lending against it. The idea of refinancing your property to buy the next property is a common concept in that world. So somebody that comes to you that already has assets interested in buying a Bitcoin, and again, not financial advice, but has your perspective changed on would you sell real estate versus if there's equity in there, why don't we capitalize that equity with a form of a loan, keep that asset, have that cash flow, build in a liquid kind of equity within Bitcoin? So yeah, just kind of curious from a real estate perspective, how do you see it now?
That's a good question. I think real estate's going to keep trending to zero in terms of Bitcoin. So it really depends on what your goals are, right? And I think there's probably a point where most people probably want to exit their Bitcoin at least a little bit just to get some chips off the table, as people might say. And I think it's pretty smart if you have a property and you have a significant amount of equity in it. I think it would be smart to get to 1 Bitcoin if you can. And a lot of people have tons of equity in their properties, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth, and today they can buy 1 whole Bitcoin for 79K. And if you could do that, I highly recommend it. I think that would be a really great decision. There are actually a couple of people in my group who they asked me how they would do it, why they would do it. They wanted to go through the process of doing it, and they ended up doing it, which is really great. I think that's going to probably make a massive difference in their overall net worth over the next few decades. As in, that's probably the generational wealth that they need. Just that Bitcoin that they bought with their home equity is their generational wealth, and then everything else is just the cherry on top. So I think it is. I think real estate is, if you're using it as a primary residence, it's fine. But if you're buying more properties than you need, I'm not a huge fan of that. I think it's just a lot of work. You don't get enough of a return. Depending on how you do it, you may have to own multiple properties. You could have a property manager if you want, but that could cost you money. And you have to have a certain level or size of portfolio to do that. I actually have a spreadsheet talking about the real estate. I have a spreadsheet where I talked about the differences between borrowing against Bitcoin versus borrowing against real estate. And it seems like borrowing against Bitcoin is going to get easier and easier, and the rates are going to go lower and lower. I don't know if you guys know, but ShakePay came out with a loan, a Bitcoin line of credit, and it has a promotional rate of 7.5%. I'm not associated with them or anything like that, not affiliated with them, but I use their service, their rate is 9.5% ongoing. That's the regular rate. So rates are falling, and they'll continue to fall because more and more competition can join this space, and more people can lend against Bitcoin. It's basically risk-free for the lenders because they're just holding onto your Bitcoin, and if the Bitcoin price goes down, they can just sell at any point. So it doesn't. I think there's no risk, or at least there's very little risk to lenders, because even with real estate, if you lend to someone against their house, you can't sell their property from under them unless they stop paying. And when do they stop paying? They'll probably stop paying if the property's value drops below their loan. So at that point, you can't even get back the money they need. Whereas with Bitcoin, I think it's an extremely powerful asset for lenders and for borrowers.
Well, they hold the
Rajat,
keys immediately, right? So like they have the actual asset. You put that in their possession. So like from
Yeah.
the moment inception of the loan, they're secured fully, usually 2 to 1,
Exactly.
right? So
Yeah.
it's pristine collateral. And I often think, what does the next persistent bidder of Bitcoin, when people wonder strategy or the SBR, the entire banking industry waking up to Bitcoin as collateral, just how much Bitcoin comes off supply when that gets starting to be locked up in all these contracts. Right? That makes my eyes water when I think about it.
Yeah. That's Bitcoin that can't be sold, at least in the short term. While if Bitcoin's going up, that Bitcoin is not going to move.
I'm representing Leaden today.
Oh, nice.
So that's so Rajat, yeah, like you said, they're starting to become more options for obviously ShakePay. Leaden have been around for a long time. I got this T-shirt at the first conference we had in Toronto. There's also a company called Candina Lending, I think, or Candina. They're based in El Salvador. One of the questions is it true Coinbase just released a Bitcoin-backed mortgage? Any ideas? And I'll come back to that. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was Bitcoin lending is okay, but there have been issues with the likes of Celsius, probably some others, where the companies went under. They were doing nefarious things. They were giving yield on Bitcoin. So, I mean, could you talk about the other side of that? And like, is there any counterparty risks, obviously, with the ShakePays, the Ledens, the other guys?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you could have your Bitcoin taken from you and you may never get it back, right? They may not give you your Bitcoin back. Let's say, for example, if ShakePay goes bankrupt, or if they're lending your Bitcoin to someone else and they don't get it back, exactly the same thing as Celsius and BlockFi and all that. And then on top of that, there could also be the issue with governments taking your Bitcoin, them mishandling your Bitcoin, like Ledin or ShakePay mishandling your Bitcoin. I think there's a way to prevent being liquidated. I think that's the most important thing. I think the likelihood of somebody having their Bitcoin taken from them through a confiscation is much lower than the likelihood of somebody getting liquidated. I actually had a client who lost 4 Bitcoin because he got liquidated. He got his loan liquidated in, I don't know when the first time Bitcoin reached below 60K was this year. I think it was February.
Yeah.
But he got his Bitcoin liquidated then.
Just touched it. Yeah.
Yeah, it went to like 59.2 or something like that, or 58.8.
Just tapped it.
And
It just
he got
went
margin
right below,
call?
yeah. And he lost his Bitcoin because it's automated. Right? He lost 4 Bitcoin on that transaction.
Once it dropped below that loan to value, then just done.
Yeah, and it's math, right? And I have a spreadsheet that I want to show you guys. I think this is really important for people to learn about. If you have a if you have a low enough LTV, it's very likely that you won't get liquidated, right? So let's say, for example, if you have 10 Bitcoin as collateral in total, like you have 10 Bitcoin, or you have even just 1 Bitcoin, there's a certain amount that you can borrow against it that will prevent you from being liquidated. So in this case, let's say, for example, you have 1 Bitcoin, you take on a loan for 10K. Your LTV is only 12.71%. That means that Bitcoin's price would have to fall to $12,500 for you to get liquidated. And if it doesn't do that, you're not going to get liquidated. And then on top of this, what happens is over time, as let's say, for example, you have a loan at 11.5%, Ledin has 11.5% loans right now. Let's say you have a loan at 11.5%, your loan will compound to over time. It'll go from $10,000 to $29,699, but your LTV would fall. Your LTV would fall from 12.71% to 7.21%. That's if Bitcoin has an 18% compound annual growth rate over the next 10 years. So you can see here, your Bitcoin collateral will go from 78K to 411K versus your loan would have gone from 10,000 to 29,699. So you can take on, theoretically, if you're able to, you can take on an additional, if you're able to bring your LTV back up to 50%, you can take on an additional $176,000 loan against that same Bitcoin, which I think is extremely powerful because you can continue to borrow against your Bitcoin, but you have to be very careful. That's the thing. You have to be very, very careful. So my suggestion would be to keep your collateral under 10% of your total stack, because what that does is it prevents you from losing your total stack. Let's say your Bitcoin does get confiscated. If your collateral is 10% or less, that means that you would lose a maximum of 10% of your collateral. So if you have 1 Bitcoin, you use 0.1 Bitcoin as collateral, you'll lose that 0.1 Bitcoin. That's one thing. And then the other side of things would be if you have a small amount of collateral being tied up to a loan, you can always add more collateral at any time when your Bitcoin does fall. So you can bring your LTV back down.
So Rajat, just a question here, right? So you're talking about taking the loan. Okay, now that you've got the loan, what's the playbook on using it? What would you be applying? You're obviously not going on a vacation with this, or at least you shouldn't be, right? Like, what are you doing with it?
So what I would say is, I think that it's smart to build your own business or buy assets that you think will, like, let's say, for example, I don't know if you guys know her, but her name is Cody Sanchez. She always talks about laundromats and car washes, and it's just boring businesses, right? Things that are generating cash flow, and they create cash flow so that the people who own them, they can get cash flow, and if they borrow money to buy them in the first place, they can pay back the loan with the cash flow from the business. And I think that's a really great way of doing it. Keep in mind, I haven't personally bought any businesses. That would be out of my scope of expertise. I think talking to somebody else for that would be smart, but there are ways to do it where you can use your borrowed funds to buy cash flowing assets and then use the cash flow to pay off your debts.
So arguably, if you took a collateral loan to 10% LTV, right, and then pipe that into like a SATA or an STRC that's yielding 12 or 13% annually, effectively paying off whatever you owe, would that be kind of a flywheel? Would that be a playbook?
I wouldn't do that. I think right now that's too risky because the loans right now are about 10%, right? So let's say, for example, if you're paying 10% or 11.5% versus you're getting even 13%, there's only a spread of 1.5%. And I don't think that's worth it. I think that's way too risky because number one, you're risking your Bitcoin. Number two, SATA STRC could go down. So you're taking a risk on that part. You could have your Bitcoin confiscated. The spread just isn't worth it.
Yeah, you're kind of doing the opposite of Sailor. You're going in the other direction there. So, but yeah, I think there's really only one product you buy with a Bitcoin-backed loan. That's Bitcoin, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know that the problem is the problem is when the price drops and you get margin called. Like it's
well, and see, and this is where no financial advice, but I guess where I would come from is if you're looking at these products and you're in accumulation mode, these aren't for you, in my opinion, right? If you're looking at these in terms of a preservative, right? Like you're throwing out 10 Bitcoin. Those are big numbers, right? For me, especially where it's so early with these products, likely the terms, conditions, rates, et cetera, are only improving. They're only getting better so if you're looking at these products, I would be much more in tune with like, you have that stack size. You don't want to spend your Bitcoin. You have enough scale that if you took a loan out against and you did go on vacation, you'd still likely be able to come out ahead in the future and because you have the Bitcoin. So if you're looking to accumulate and borrow against your Bitcoin to buy more Bitcoin, anyway, I think that's a bit of a gamble. So
Yeah,
anyway, who says that we're pushing these loans,
yeah, this guy's saying we're pushing these loans. We're not pushing loans. I mean, I'm sure if you listen to us guys backstage, there's a few of us maybe that have lost money on loans or had, I mentioned Celsius. I had a bit of an issue with Celsius, but you're right, Ben. Like you shouldn't be taking massive risk if you're not in the position to take the massive risk, and yeah, repurposing that capital into something else if you have a rock solid business idea. I don't know about laundromats though. Like that sounds like a Gary V or a Grant Cardone thing where you can just, these things are licensed to print money. I don't know if they're just that, but
yeah, you need to go into the details. I don't exactly know what you would buy because, like I said, I haven't done it, but
yeah,
like that's the way that I would want people to think. Like
Yeah.
if they can find ways to put their money into something and then get back more money out of it, or let's say, for example, like people, I started my own business with, like, I bought my mic with Bitcoin, and it was worth it. It was worth every penny.
oh yeah,
I'm so happy that I did it. I'm just gonna keep that. Like this is a reminder that I used my Bitcoin to build this business, and now it's throwing off way more business than I put into, or Bitcoin than I put into it.
The other comment I just want to go back to is the Coinbase. I did see this. The Coinbase just released the Bitcoin backed mortgages. Again, I guess it's doing the same thing. Putting that Bitcoin up as collateral, and to be able to get a mortgage. Is that something you would recommend, or what are your thoughts around that?
I actually don't know much about it. Do you know what their rates are?
I don't. We could look it up here, I'm sure.
I actually don't see the rates here, but if their rates are like 5% for just borrowing as Bitcoin, their rates for Bitcoin-backed mortgages should probably be lower, right? Because now your mortgage is backed by two assets essentially.
Yeah. Well, listen, maybe we'll bring it back to the retirement portion. So we named this Bitcoin and earlier retirement. So, with your theme, with the program that you have, could you kind of line out the steps? I don't want to give you all the program away, but line out the steps as to what that looks like.
Oh, I can actually show it. I don't have a problem with that. I have no
Sure.
issues with showing it. I think this would be really useful for a lot of people because some people they just want to do it themselves, right? They don't want support, and that's perfectly fine.
Open
Yeah.
source. I like it. Open source.
One of the just when you were talking earlier about people who there's people who are set up for retirement, or people who are ready for it or not ready for it.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who was never ready for it. And I was like, frivolous and do all these things. I'm getting to the point that I need to start thinking about it, and I'm thinking about it seriously. So it's it's a timely subject.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think the key here is to start working on your foundation. So your foundation is your mindset, right? The phase one is your foundation, where you work on your inner self, right? And I think one of the problems that I had was my parents would constantly say that money isn't. You have to work hard for money. They didn't specifically say money doesn't grow on trees, but they did say like money is very hard to come by, right? And I had that ingrained in my mind, and that was a huge problem for me. I always thought, money is scarce. I should be exchanging something that's scarce for money, and I would always exchange it for obviously dollars. And I had to fix that first. That's the foundation, your money and your mindset. The second part here is your personal finance audit, just going through your own personal finances, your budget, your net worth, figuring out what your expenses are like, what your income is like, trying to figure out if you have a gap between your income and your expenses. If you don't have a gap, then you can't save, right? And that's the basis, right? It's like we were talking about calories in, calories out, right? It's the same thing. If you're consuming more calories than you burn, then you're going to get fatter. If you
do you think for Canadians right now, I mean, that gap's starting to get smaller?
Oh yeah, way smaller. It's crazy. It's crazy how much smaller it's getting. It's scary because whenever I think about people making a salary, like earning a salary, I don't know how they survive. I have no idea. I really don't know. Like, how do people get through their life? Like, every time I go to Costco, everything is going up in price.
Yeah, it's
How do you
challenging.
survive? You can't. And I think in Canada, it's probably even more important. I created a spreadsheet in this that was specifically for this. It's a budget tracker and then a net worth tracker, and then people can just fill that in. We go through it together. That's the first part of it, the foundation. The next part is understanding Bitcoin, just figuring out how it works. And I think that's where you are now, Dan. You've already
Yeah.
understood what Bitcoin is. You already know what it is. I think you've already gone through that. And I think that's probably the hardest part, because you actually have to figure out why you should own Bitcoin versus, let's say, stocks, real estate. And that part's difficult, right? That takes a long time to do. The next one is building your portfolio, trying to figure out how much Bitcoin you should have, when you should accumulate Bitcoin, how much accumulate you should buy, how much Bitcoin you should buy, what methods you should use to accumulate Bitcoin, right? Dollar cost average versus lump sum. And the next one here is just protecting and holding your stack, buying it, keeping it in self custody, holding it securely, making sure that you don't lose your Bitcoin, and then holding it. Like that's the hardest part, right? I genuinely think that most people's biggest enemy isn't the market, it's themselves, because what they do is they sell their Bitcoin, they give it away, and they lose out on all that compounding. So once you've figured all of that out, I think you can start monetizing your stack. You can start borrowing against it. You can sell it if you need to. You can sell some Bitcoin each month to hold on to a certain amount of cash so you can pay for your expenses. And that's that part. And then after that, I think the most important thing here is building a plan, like an actual plan for what you're going to do over the next decade. For example, if you understand Bitcoin but you don't know what to do when it falls, then you're probably going to end up selling. Right. I think most Bitcoiners, even internally, have thought of like, what am I going to do if Bitcoin falls? But I think most of you guys, I think all of you guys probably bought the dip. I bought the dip. Right. I know Sunny probably bought the dip as well.
Still
Right. And that's
buying the
because
dip.
we already have a plan in our minds. We already know, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if you don't have a plan for that, I mean, it's very difficult to get through the dips. So you would focus on, you would control, you'd build your 10-year plan. You want to hold through bull and bear markets. I talked about insurance in this, life insurance, term life insurance, how to make sure that your family is protected if something does happen to you before you reach your stacking goals. And and we go through the plan together. We build the plan together. We make sure that there's no mistakes, or how the person is thinking is on track to get them to reach financial freedom.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have a few more questions. Wasim or Ben?
I guess I was just kind of curious. You have an accounting background, and Bitcoin being like the first innovation in accounting, and however many years since double entry bookkeeping, right? But I haven't found an accountant yet in my local area that seems on board. So I'm just kind of curious, like in your circles of influence, have you seen any kind of waking up within that community at all? Is it still pretty much blinders on? What is it that they're not, like, how do you not see third-party accounting every 10 minutes, audited, the double spend problem is solved? Like, should that not be, what does that mean as an accountant? So just kind of curious, like, what we say TradFi is, Bitcoin's here for TradFi, or TradFi is now here for Bitcoin, yet there's just swaths of people that have no idea what the difficulty adjustment is or what a UTXO is. So just curious, generally speaking, what that kind of community is, still the messaging is.
They haven't figured it out yet. They have no idea.
So
We're early.
Yeah, we're definitely early. Even from running Canadian Bitcoin conference, obviously we're a business. We're accepting Bitcoin for ticket sales, for sponsorship, and then we have expenses and paying expenses. We have a great accountant, John Tellis from Emberley, I think his company is, and he's great. But it's actually from my limited knowledge of accounting, it's a difficult process in terms of figuring out when you accept it, figuring out if there's a delta between when so that's, I don't know if you walk into a, what do you call the tax companies in Toronto, the little green H&R Block, or like the what
Oh
do you
yeah,
call them?
H&R Block, I think.
H&R Block.
H&R Block. Yeah, if you walk in there and say, look, I got a Bitcoin company, like, are they going to be able to help you? Probably not. I'm not sure.
I don't
But,
think so.
yeah.
But keep in mind, I mean, they're usually pretty behind, right? And when I did the CFA, there was not a single question about what would happen if the US dollar failed or the Canadian dollar failed, right? And they don't think of it that way. They don't think that there can be competition for fiat currencies.
Yeah. And that's a massive topic right now.
That's a paradigm
Sure.
shift. That's like you're looking at the world completely differently, and most people can't. It's too much. Like it's way too much for most people.
Yeah. What
Well,
seem
that's-
you want to land the plane?
Yeah, no, that's actually where I was going to go. Actually, right, exactly on that theme, right? Because I mean, it's happening in real time as we speak. I mean, we just saw it this week. Like Bitcoin price just pumped, right? And if you kind of drill into that a little bit and see what's going on, gold did too. But you know, you
Yeah.
kind of look at that a little bit. You know, so Scott Bessent, right, the Treasury Secretary, you know, did a bit of a pump on the bond market. You know, basically just buying back, you know, 10 and 30-year bonds. So I'm just curious, like, because, you know, you've got a traditional banking background as well, right? Like, do you see, you know, kind of what they're doing in the US is a kind of with yield, the beginnings, let's call it yield curve control. Like, is this kind of like a temporary Band-Aid are they putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole? Is this the beginning of a kind of a larger yield curve control, which means like constant debasement? And what does that mean for Bitcoin in the long term?
I mean, to be honest, I don't know what's happening on a day-to-day basis, but I think long term, this is always going to point to Bitcoin going up. I don't think the system could survive without more money being printed, and I think that's the general trend. But in general, I mean, I don't really pay too much attention to the day-to-day moves, and I don't know if it's worth paying attention to them too much. If you're properly positioned, I mean, you're all of us probably got hurt more than we got, but then we benefited from this recent move from Bitcoin because we get to buy less, right? And
Yeah.
we're able to buy 33% less than we were able to before. So to me, it's more painful to see it go up like this. I'd rather see it just go side. If it could go sideways for the next 10 years while I'm accumulating, I'd be happy to see that.
Yeah, and that's a really important point, right? Like, I mean, you've done your homework, you've kind of hedged your thesis, you understand what your thesis is, right? So now it's about positioning. You understand your thesis,
Yeah.
and the time to do your positioning is before the thesis plays out, not after, right? So you've already done an assessment here. You know, Bitcoin's going up and to the right because the dollar is going, you know, down from top down to bottom right. So, you know, now is the time to position yourself. So
Yeah,
I think we'll end it on
Absolutely.
that note there, Dan.
Perfect. I think that's a great comment to land on. Now's the time to position yourself. I don't think it's too late. I think when you know, when you look around some of the topics we've talked about today, like there's still lots of time. I'm sure Bitcoin's going to be accelerating and appreciating for years to come. So, listen, thank you very much, Rajat. We really appreciate your time. Do you want to give people an idea of where to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a link if you want to check out the program that I was talking about before. It's in the description below. Or if you guys are able to share it somewhere, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm on X, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram. All of them, I'm sharing free content every day as often as I possibly can, and I enjoy doing it.
Perfect. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time, and we'll catch you in the next one, hopefully.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.